On Issues and Insiders today, we touch upon the controversies surrounding the coach selection process for Korea's national football team, as well as the latest on the upcoming Paris Olympics as we count down a week to the opening night. Hello and welcome. It's Friday afternoon, July 19th here in South Korea, and you're watching Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sunhee. A bitter war of words among those in the football field is unfolding here in Korea following the selection of a new coach for the national team. For details on this and more, I have sportscaster Jason Lee here in the studio. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you.
I also have Yoo Jeeho at Yonhap News Agency joining us live on the line. Chio, it's good to have you on.
It's great to be here too.
Jason, we'll start here in the studio. So there have been rampant allegations of irregularities regarding the selection process of Hong Myung-bo as the national football team's coach. What can you share with us about the controversy thus far?
Yeah, this has been quite interesting. So Jurgen Klinsmann was the former head coach of the national football team. Of course, he was fired back in February. And searching for the new head coach over the last 5 months has been honestly a big mess. They've ended up hiring Hong Myung-bo, and in the end, I don't think that that's a terrible selection by any means. However, it's the process of how they came to that. It has been just leaving all sorts of messy residue all over the place. Let's start with the resignation of the head of the national team committee, Jung Hae-sung, who quit on June the 28th, and along with him, 3 other members of the committee had resigned. So there's all sorts of question as to why, one of the people involved in the selection process would suddenly resign. It has not been publicly answered as to why he has left. And then another thing that came out right when Hong Myung-bo was hired, literally, was Park Joo-ho, another member of the committee that was part of the selection process. He suddenly came out with a YouTube video detailing some of the issues and problems that went on within the KFA and their selection process of the coach. And he was actually in the middle of recording this video when the news struck that Hong Myung-bo was selected as the national team coach. So there's been all sorts of issues when it comes to transparency as the process was taking place. All sorts of issues as to him, Park Joo-ho, being sent all around Europe on a bit of a wild goose chase to many different countries because he was a former soccer player in Germany as well as in Switzerland. So he has a little bit of a pulse on European coaches and stuff like that. So he was sent to talk with all sorts of coaches out there. And in the end, he felt that he wasn't really a part of the process, and almost as if it was a fait accompli as to who the KFA wanted, and that turned out to be Hong Myung-bo. So again, I don't have an issue with the selection of who they hired, but it just seems that the process was not very efficient.
Right, and could have perhaps had more transparency, as you mentioned earlier. Chio, you've been covering this story. What are some of the latest developments?
Yeah, so Hong Myung-bo himself, his appointment was finalized in a vote by the board of directors of the KFA, the Korea Football Association, just over the weekend. And the following day, he left for Europe to interview potential candidates for a couple of assistant coaching positions on his backroom staff. He plans to hire a technical, sort of tactical assistant coach from someone from Europe, and another coach, more of a physical trainer from that continent as well. In the meantime, while he's out of the country, the sports ministry and also the ministry runs this Korea Sports Ethics Center have both said they will investigate how the KFA went about selecting this head coach. They're going to kind of look deeper into the process of, the vetting process, if you will, whether the KFA honors some of the, proper procedures to end up hiring Hong Myung-bo in the first place. So, things could get a little, dicey, a little controversial, even more so going forward. But right now, the KFA is kind of playing, we've got FIFA behind our back kind of card, because if you look at the FIFA statutes, they've got a couple of articles in there that require member associations to operate independently, free from political influence from third parties. Now, whether the ministry's investigation or the ethics center's investigation kind of entail third-party interference, I think that remains to be seen. FIFA has not stated one way or the other. They haven't commented on the Korean situation at the moment. I think they're going to wait and see just how far or how deep the ministry and the ethics center would go with their investigation into this case. So, this thing, Jason touched up on the whole process, and then now with the pending investigation, this is not going to die down anytime soon. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding Hong Myung-bo's tenure, even before he has actually even coached the first match with this team.
Right. Joo, I understand this might be a difficult question, but what do you suppose is the main cause behind such controversy involving the Korea Football Association?
Yeah, with this KFA, Jason mentioned the word transparency, and there's just a staggering lack of transparency when it comes to, their discussions of the whole process. There's so many questions that still have not been answered by the KFA or even Hong Myung-bo himself. He was hired, the appointment was announced on the 7th of July, and Hong Myung-bo apparently accepted the offer from the KFA the previous night. But if you go back another day back, on 5th of July, the Friday, he was still coaching in the K-League with Busan HDFC. And in the pre-match media scrum, he told the reporters that he was not going to meet anybody from the KFA. And he had told the fans that, just don't worry about me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to leave this club mid-season. And then just a few hours later, after the match ended, he was home, and he was met with the KFA's technical director, Lee Im-sang, who was in charge of the whole selection process. He'd been waiting outside his home for Hong Myung-bo to arrive for a couple of hours. And then they sat down and met for a few hours. And then the following night, Hong Myung-bo somehow decided to coach in the national team. So, what had happened overnight, obviously, I guess on some levels is personal, but they haven't really come out with any sort of plausible explanation of how Hong ended up going from, I'm not going to coach this team, I'm not meeting anybody from the KFA, to within a few hours, taking the job, accepting that offer. So they haven't, they haven't had as much transparency, I think, as people would have wanted in terms of explaining the whole process and how things went down. And also, how do you go from interviewing potentially, dozens of international foreign candidates, spending so many hours talking to them, hearing their presentation on what they're going to do with the Korean football? How do you go from that to, sitting down and talking to Hong Myung-bo for about, a few hours and then just making him the coach? Where's the sort of the vetting process of Hong? How was he not interviewed properly? How was he not asked to maybe do his own presentation on what he wants to do with the national team when you'd asked all the other candidates to do a lot of the sort of the presentation on their football philosophy and visions. So there's also that's also an issue of being fair to all the other candidates compared to Hong Myung-bo, who again somehow ended up getting the job after a few hours of meeting with the kid.
Right, and hence the allegations of a lack of transparency as well then. Jason, as Joo mentioned, Hong Myung-bo is currently in Europe looking for foreign coaches to join his staff. Now, there's been a bit of talk about this particular process as well. Is it not common for coaches to include foreign members within their staff?
I think it definitely is. I think we've seen in past, as an example, when Gus Hiddink was the head coach, or Dick Advocaat. In both cases, Pim Verbeek was among his staff members, Afshin Gotbi as well. So it is normal to see Europeans helping out in the Korean team. I think the difference here is it's Hong Myung-bo as the head coach. So you have a Korean coach that is going to perhaps have some European or foreign coaches underneath him. So that might appear a little bit different, but from a tactical standpoint, I think it makes as much sense as anything. I think having as much outside input into philosophy or just ideas that you might not have thought of if you have an all-Korean staff, I think it's a very wise decision, and hopefully that'll turn out for the best for the Korean team.
Right, hopefully, of course. Jeeho, Team Korea, it's looking ahead to the third round of the Asian Football Confederation qualifiers starting, I believe, in September. How does this latest controversy perhaps look to affect the players or their play strategy, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's obviously very distracting for the national team. These players, they follow the news. They they have the pulse on what's going on the national team, especially some of the mainstays. Captain Son Heung-min and some of the other Europe-based guys. In fact, Hong Myung-bo is actually scheduled to meet with Son in London at some point during his trip or stay in Europe in the coming days. Obviously, this situation is going to come up in their conversations, and again, it's distracting, and I think it puts a lot of pressure on those players to come through for their coach. He's very, he's been a very unpopular choice. I guess Hong Myung-bo in a vacuum as a coach, he's not such a bad selection, like Jason said earlier. He had coached the national team before. He won a bronze medal with under 23 national team at the Olympics in London 12 years ago. He had some success at the K-League level, winning a couple of championships in a row with Ulsan. So, if you just look at him in a vacuum, he's not such a bad selection, but the whole process leading up to his selection has left a lot of people scratching their heads a little bit. And I think it's going to be key for the team to come out and win the first couple of matches and do so in convincing fashion to silence some of the detractors and some of the critics. And also this could affect, I think, Hong's standing among the players even. Very few players have actually played under him with him before, because it's been close to 10 years since he last coached the senior national team. Very few players are still around since the last time Hong coached the national team back in 2014 with the World Cup. Son Heung-min being one of them, but some of the younger players might not have as much respect for the coach as maybe they should at this point, just because of all the controversies surrounding his selection. So Hong's gonna try hard to, win over some of the players that he hasn't coached in the past. But I think one thing that's working in Korea's favor is that they ended up in a pretty, I shouldn't say easy, but in a relatively easier group compared to maybe a couple of other groups in the third round. They're going to be facing Iraq, Kuwait, Jordan, Oman, and Palestine. Korea they've only got to finish in the top 2 out of the 5 to qualify for the World Cup. So a team of this caliber, barring any stunning upsets, it's going to be hard for Korea not to qualify out of this group. So. But for me, I think they've just got to go out and win a couple of matches in September in a really convincing fashion to kind of help out their coach a little bit.
Right then, apart from winning a few matches, Jason, what do you propose to put things back on track for football here in Korea?
Well, I think, as Jeeho mentioned, winning actually is the most important thing, because if the team struggles in any sort of a way, even if they have a draw against a team that they shouldn't beat, then people look back on things like this. They'll look back and say, oh, see, it was all this controversy. We hired the wrong person. You make excuses. And it's any time that you have any kind of controversy like this, a scandal, then fingers are pointed. When things are going good, when they're smooth sailing, when you're winning by 2 or 3 goals, when you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're beating teams that are below you in the rankings, when you're winning on home turf, when you're winning away, then people forget about the controversies. They forget about the stories, and all of a sudden it becomes, well, maybe that was the right decision after all. Maybe that was the right way to go about everything. So you stop second guessing. But if there's any sort of a issue in the win-loss column, that can be an issue. Having said that, I think clearly this might be an example of how things are handled in the future, because it seems like the process that they came to with how Hong was hired, it almost seems that there was like a conservative approach from the 20 years ago, 40 years ago Korean style of how you do business and make decisions, compared to like the committee of the new people that are part of the committee that are now in their late 30s or 40s. And I think it was a bit of a clash of those people. We have to remember that one of their directors and 3 other members of that committee quit. They resigned. Why would you suddenly do that unless there was some sort of dissension within that group? So perhaps because this is being exposed by the media, because this was on a YouTube gaining 3-4 million views, because people like Park Ji-sung, Lee Yong-pyo, Lee Dong-guk have all given their support to Park Joo-ho in exposing some of the stories that have been going on in his YouTube video, I think there might be something that might provide a little more transparency in the future, and hopefully this will be a one-time event that sort of disappears along with some winning games for Korea.
Right, and talking about games, Chiu, we're counting down a week to the Paris Summer Olympics. What are some of the competitions and who are some of the athletes to keep our eyes on?
Yeah, with Team Korea, I think they've set a rather conservative medal target, gold medal target, with trying to win about a handful, about 5 gold medals, finish around top 15 in the medal race. If they do end up with 5 gold medals, they would be the fewest total since 1976 in Montreal. Korea boycotted 80 games in Moscow, competed at the LA Olympics in '84, and pretty much since then they've been able to win a whole bunch of medals, gold medals, and kind of hang around in top 5, top 10 in the medal race. But this time around, I think they're trying to tamper some of the expectations. I think that some of the medals will most likely come from the usual suspects of sports, archery. There are 5 gold medals at stake in archery. I think Korea is trying to win 3, maybe even 4 out of the 5. You're looking at shooting and swimming, where medals will come pretty early in the competition. In fact, the day after the opening ceremony next Friday, there will be potentially some swimming medals and shooting medals that will come Korea's way. And also, I think you're looking at sports like fencing, taekwondo, the traditional martial art, judo even. Korea's got a couple of reigning world champions, Kim Min-jong and Hong Myung-bo in the men's and women's competitions there. So with judo, they weren't able to win any gold medal at each of the past 2 Olympics. I think they're trying to end the drought, mini drought, if you will, in Paris this time. Even artistic gymnastics. You got an athlete named Yoo Jeeho, potentially contending for a medal in the men's floor exercise. He's actually ranked #1 in the World Cup season so far this year. So he's considered a sneaky medal contender in that sport. There's unfortunately on the other hand, Korea has only qualified for one team event, one team sport, if you will. That will be women's handball. I think the men's football team getting eliminated early in the Olympic qualifiers. There was a pretty shocking development earlier this spring. Didn't qualify in basketball, volleyball, one of the most popular sport in this country. Korea didn't qualify for the Olympics. So there's a bit of a less to look forward to, I think, on the team events, but some of the other niche sports in the Olympics, the kind of things that you would only get to watch every 4 years, I think that Korea is going to be able to win a few medals in those sports.
Right, and staying with the optimism, Jason, some pundits claim that July 29th, and feel free to correct me, July 29th could be Team Korea's day of gold medals. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, I think July 29th, or you could say July 28th, just after midnight. I think they qualify as the same. If you look at the 28th, 29th, 10 past midnight is when the women's team archery event takes place. And this is about as sure of a gold medal as Korea is going to have. In the history of this event, Korea has won the gold medal every single time dating back to 1988. So they're 9 for 9. I don't know if any team or country has dominated a sport as well as Korea has in archery, but the women will try to make it 10 for 10 at just 10 minutes past midnight on the 29th. But that's not the only medal that they're going to have a chance to win. I think also later on in, it'll be the wee hours, maybe like 5 a.m. On the morning of the 29th, as mentioned. Korea will have an opportunity for gold perhaps in fencing. Kim Jae-won is a former bronze medalist from the Asian Games in the épée, and he will be among those competing for the medal in fencing there. So hopefully he'll be able to reach the final and perhaps come home with a gold. Also in shooting, women's shooting, Kim Ji-hyun is someone to watch for that they'll be handing out medals later on the day on the 29th as well. So some potential medals there. I think the most obvious one, as mentioned, is the women's archery, but perhaps an opportunity in fencing and shooting as well.
Fingers crossed, right? Jeeho, beyond Team Korea's prospects, what appears to be some of the pending concerns as we count down to the games?
Yeah, so I think there was a survey done on the French people on their prospects of Paris Olympics. The results, I think the results came out a few days ago, and I think the vast majority of the people are concerned about security. There's going to be a massive crowd from people coming from all over the world. It's descending on the French capital. There's got to be potential threat of a terrorist attacks. Even I think people are concerned about that. They're going to have the opening ceremony along the River Seine, and that's outdoor kind of open space opening ceremony that's never been done before in the Olympics. So I think there's going to be some pretty serious security threat there, and also the weather. The temperature might rise to, I think close to 40 Celsius, although it is a lot drier out there than it is in Korea. I think some people are concerned about the weather conditions as well. And also, I got to mention the water quality of the River Seine. They're going to have some open water swimming and also a triathlon, the swimming portion of the triathlon at some parts of the river. There's been concerns about water quality, whether it would be safe for the athletes to actually compete in the water of the river. But the French authorities are trying to, I guess, improve the water quality even as we speak. Just a week from now, there will be the opening ceremony. I think the swimming and the triathlon will be a little later on in the competition, so they're going to have a little more time to make sure that the water is going to be safe for the athletes to compete in.
Right. And Jason, going back to the security thing that Jeeho mentioned, South Korea has dispatched 31 police officers upon the request of the French government as part of efforts to bolster security. Very briefly speaking, is this a common practice?
I think it can be. Perhaps this might be something more for the future of things to come. And it's not just Korea that have been asked to send security personnel. France has actually asked many different allies, I think maybe in the 40s or 50s, of people from other countries. And I think there's a little bit of give and take here because you're getting different people with different languages that can help out in a lot of different ways. So when we look back to the Euro 2024 that just concluded in Germany, France, as an example, sends security forces to help out Germany during their Euro Cup. And in the same way, they've kind of asked them to reciprocal that for the Olympics. And I think when you have security forces from different countries, it's good to have people in different languages that see different things from their own culture that might be suspicious for something to take place. And I think maybe it would seem unpolitical if you were to ask, countries, only certain countries. So by them asking the 40, 50 different countries to send security forces, it kind of seems less assuming as well. But I think it's a good thing. I think for security purposes, it can only benefit. And maybe even for those security people going there, they have an opportunity to spend time in Paris during the Olympics rather than having to stay in their own countries to watch it on TV.
Right, for sure. All right, Jason, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Jeeho, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, on that note, we end this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.